Before us, a sprawling city at night stretching far into the horizon. A city like yours, where people live and work and dream of the future. Here in this melting pot of mixed emotions and fears, a war takes place every moment of the day and night. A war between the criminal and law enforcer. A desperate struggle to maintain peace during the growing years. A war that starts with a crime and begins with an arrest. The struggle continues with no end in sight. A crime is reported, and if possible, an arrest is made. And with the sound of handcuffs clicking, we know the more difficult battle will soon begin at police station. The ID was made?
Yeah, positive identification.
Let's see the report.
Julian Potter, age 28, accused of violation of Code 661, assault and battery. The offense taking place this city, this date, at his address, 252 Garden Avenue. The victim, Mrs. Julian Potter, age 19, critical condition, St. Francis Hospital.
Do I have to listen to this?
You keep your mouth shut, boy, or these walls will cave in on you. Go ahead, Sam.
Condition of victim complicated by reason of her pregnancy. That's about it.
Well? Do you mind telling us why you did this?
Yes, I do. It's none of your business.
Now, don't play games with me, boy. I want an answer now.
I refuse to say anything until I see my lawyer.
Well, you'll see him soon enough. But unless you change your attitude, he isn't going to do you a bit of good. All right, Sam, take him into interrogation.
Come along, Mr. Potter.
What's he back in here for?
I'm sorry, Sergeant. It was just one of those things. I don't want to cause anybody any trouble.
Drunk and disorderly again.
And a few other charges. Harry Picker arrested this night, violation of codes 222, 177, 49, 229, and 330. Drunk, disorderly, disturbing the peace. Molesting.
Molesting? Harry? You, Harry?
I'm sorry, Sergeant. Honest, I am.
Check my record. Go ahead, check my record.
4 years, isn't it? Well, it might interest you to know that you've been under suspicion for more than one job in those 4 years. Maybe your luck's running out.
You're wrong. But I'd even be willing to take a lie detector test to prove to you that I wasn't in with those men. Anything to prove to you that I mean what I say.
Well, we might be able to arrange just such a test.
Good. I'd be very happy to. My lawyer says it's okay with him. I'd be perfectly willing.
You know, until you pulled that lawyer gag, I was almost beginning to believe you.
Oh, you wouldn't believe your own mother. Why don't you let me alone? Why don't you just let me alone?
Take it easy, lady. Everything will be all right. It's a great bunch of guys after you get to know them.
Harry!
I was just trying to help the little lady, that's all. Just trying to help her.
Clean your hands.
Thank you.
Sit over there. Hodges, keep an eye open, will you?
Potter?
Yeah, I'm not sure that Potter is sane. I'm not necessarily expecting any trouble, but just keep your eye open anyway, will you?
Sure, Sam.
Well, Mr. Potter, Have you decided to explain why you tried to kill your wife?
I didn't try to kill my wife. I just...
Well, go on.
I have nothing to say until I see my lawyer. I'm not a fool.
Well, perhaps you'd like to talk about politics or foreign policy or horror stories. Now, there's a subject that should be of interest to you. Come along.
Where to?
If it's not too much bother for you, behind that door is our interrogation room. Now, you'd be surprised at how much talking goes on inside there.
Oh, I'm warning you. If you lay a hand on me, I'll...
You should know better than that, Mr. Potter. This is not an inquisition. This is an interrogation. Won't you join me?
You're very funny.
And you're not. Now get in there. You know, Julian, for your clear understanding, you should know just how our police department does its job.
I'm not interested.
You should be. You're going to see a great deal of us these next few hours, maybe weeks, maybe months.
What do you mean?
I mean, you're in trouble, Julian. You may think that just because it was your wife that you beat up, it doesn't matter. But you're in deep, Julian, right up to your neck. And everything you do matters from this point on. Now, if you persist in this defiant attitude, you're going to drown. I suggest that you straighten yourself out right now, lawyer or no lawyer, or I'm going to make it impossible for you.
Why don't you let me
understand?
alone? I feel badly enough already. I'm sick to my stomach.
Why, you no good. Your wife is fighting for her life and her child's life.
She
What
had
about her
it coming.
stomach?
She had no right.
She had no right to what? No right to what?
I...
Oh, for...
I'm sorry, Sam, but I thought you'd want to know.
No, what?
Mr. Potter's mother just came into the station. She's at Sergeant White's desk.
Mother? My mother's here. Tell her to go home. Tell her I'll see her at home.
If you don't mind, Mr. Potter, I'd like to speak to your mother while she's here. Perhaps she can make some sense. Now, just take your seat.
Don't you subject my mother to any of your underhanded tactics. So help me. If you do, I'll...
You what? You do what, Mr. Potter? Now, sit down and keep your mouth shut. Rogers, keep your eye on this creep till I get back.
Sure, Sam.
Is revolting.
You really think so?
Yes. What do you mean by that?
Nothing, except from the way you've been acting. We had the same impression of you.
I simply can't understand why you are doing this, Sergeant. My son is a fine boy, and to be hauled off into a police station like this, why, it's utterly degrading.
Well, you don't seem to understand, Miss Potter. Oh, by the way, this is the officer that's handling your son's case. This is Detective Sam Abramson. This is Julian Potter's mother, Sarah Potter.
How do you do, Mrs. Potter?
Would you mind telling me what this ridiculous situation is all about?
Sarge, you haven't told her yet?
No, I haven't. I haven't been able to get through to her.
Well, it's really very simple, Mrs. Potter. Earlier this evening, one of your son's neighbors phoned the station to inform us that your son was beating up his wife. When we arrived, we found her on the kitchen floor in a very serious condition. One of our patrol cars picked up your son, Julian, walking down Simpson Street. Your daughter-in-law is now lying in St. Francis Hospital in critical condition. Your son is being held here now on charges of assault and battery. That's the story.
Well, he probably was on his way over to see me.
I beg your pardon.
He probably was on his way over to my house. He always comes straight to me whenever he has a problem. We talk it over, and then he seems to feel better. Now, just how long is my son going to be detained here?
You don't seem to realize, Mrs. Potter. Your son is not being accused of parking his car next to a hydrant or breaking a neighbor's window with a stone or a baseball. He has nearly killed his wife and the child she's bearing. We still don't know whether she's going to pull through.
Oh, don't worry. She'll pull through all right. Her kind always does. And don't expect any sympathy from me regarding her. He never should have married her in the first place. My son could have had the very best, and he picks her. Well, believe me, it was some time before I could forgive him for that.
You mean to stand there and tell me that you think it's all right for your son to nearly kill his wife and expect a child?
Oh, no, of course not. I'm no fool. But he must have had a pretty good reason to do what he did. My son is a fine boy. He wouldn't do such a thing without a substantial reason.
Could he possibly have had a good reason for doing something like that?
Don't you put me on the witness stand, Sergeant. Now, just when can I see my son?
I do think I should point out to you, should your daughter-in-law die, your son will be charged with murder.
May I see my son, please?
This way, Mrs. Potter. This way, Mrs. Potter. You just stay seated for a couple of minutes, Mrs. Potter. You'll see your son very shortly.
Look, when do we go to court and get this over with?
What's your hurry, Jean? The judge isn't going to be very happy to see you. You know that.
But it's unfair. Look, it just isn't fair. I admit I made some mistakes when I was younger, but that doesn't mean I'm still a fool.
Look, Jean, I'd like to help you, but you're not giving me much of a chance. It's just that 2 and 2 are 4. Now you go to work for this plumbing company. You work there for 6 months, and it's robbed of an $11,000 payroll. Then you go to work for a dress house, and after 5 months, it's hijacked of $40,000 worth of merchandise. And then you go in this Peters and Gerald engineering firm only 7 weeks. And what happened?
But it's a coincidence. I swear it. Please believe me. Don't you really believe that one can realize their mistakes and go straight? I have.
Come on, Jean. Who was in on it with you?
I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, let's go this way.
Where to?
Sergeant White, I've got to book you. From then on, it's up to him what to do with you. Come on.
Positive identification was made, huh? There's no question about it. All right, I've got the 3 names. Yeah. All right, will do. All right, Green.
Yeah. Gene Lester, age 42, arrested on suspicion of violation Code 88, accomplice to planned robbery. Arrested at place of crime, Peter and Gerald Engineering Incorporated. Working as stenographer for firm. Suspicion created by one of the masked men calling Jean Lester by her first name. Witness refuses to cooperate.
Well, Miss Lester,
This is a terrible mistake, Sergeant.
how many priors?
I beg your pardon?
There were, R&I reported, 13 priors and 2 convictions. She was in on it, Sergeant.
Make it a lot easier for yourself. You tell us who was in on the job with you.
Look, Sergeant, this is a coincidence, a mistake. I don't know who those 2 men were. Maybe one of them recognized me, but I couldn't recognize him with a mask on. If I knew who those men were, believe me, I'd tell you on my honor.
You really don't know. You're absolutely positive.
Sergeant, I just don't know what I'm going to have to do to convince you that I'm telling the truth.
Jean, as you walked up here, I had just finished a telephone conversation with Detective Bradley of the 27th Precinct. It seems he and his partner have arrested 3 men who were responsible for the robbery. And it seems that they named you as the accomplice.
Oh, no. Oh, now, listen, that's a rotten thing for you to say to me. You're just trying to pull something on me. They couldn't possibly name me. It's impossible.
Come on, Sergeant, I'm interested in the details.
Well, there wasn't much more. Just Richard Adams, James Gregory, and Paul Owner. They were arrested with the loot on them. No resistance to arrest, but they were more than willing to name Jean Lester as their accomplice.
Well, that dirty bunch of bums. Those lights! How do you like that? What did I ever do? Now I'm sucked in. Why did I do it? Why?
Come on, Gene. You want to give me the details?
It'll be a lot easier for you, I assure you.
What does it matter?
No.
I'd be willing to say anything if it'll help.
Alice. Alice, put aside what you're doing. Prepare for a statement. Detective Green and Miss Jean Lester will be right in.
We've known you for a long time, Harry. You've done some crazy things on account of your drinking. But you never bothered any women before, and you never stole anything that I know of, except maybe an occasional bottle of beer. All right, now tell me, why'd you do it?
There wasn't anything else I could do.
What do you mean by that?
I'm lost. On the outside, I'm just plain lost. You know, I've spent more time in than out in the last 15 years, and I haven't anybody on the outside. Not really.
Oh, no, Harry, you don't mean that you did these things just to get more than your usual 10 days.
Yeah,
Harry, life just can't be that lousy.
it ain't good. I can't get a job, and when I do, I can't hold it. I'm just married to booze. On the outside, I can't get along without this stuff. What family I have, they won't have anything to do with me, and I can't blame them. Inside, yeah, I get 3 meals a day. The boys all know me, and we have a laugh once in a while together, but maybe to somebody else it might be miserable. But to me, it's not too bad. Besides, I keep away from the stuff. It's the only way I know how.
Harry, you've been in here at least 25 times in the last year and a half. Now, believe me, the boys like you. But we're getting awfully tired of seeing you so often.
I'm sorry, but old Precinct 11 is almost like a home to me.
How did you get in such lousy shape?
Well, I started drinking about 35 years ago. For no reason. I was married then, and Lily and my wife, we used to drink every night I'd come home from work. Wasn't long before we were drinking before I went to work in the morning.
Yeah.
And I used to go to work at 7 o'clock in the morning. We were regular alcoholics in our 20s. We just lived for this stuff. For the last 10 years, every time we'd kiss each other, we could taste liquor.
Tell me, did you ever try to stop?
Not at first. We didn't think we were alkies. We were just a young couple out for a lot of laughs. We didn't realize how bad off we were until I lost the business. And then we found out how expensive liquor could be. Then we found out. Whew, it was rough.
Well, according to R&I, you've been to AA a couple of times.
Yeah, the first time I took her. And they did a good job on her, too. Made a solid citizen out of her. They couldn't get their hooks into me. I fought. I've only myself to thank for where I am today.
Your wife?
She left me. She married another guy after a while. I haven't seen her in a number of years, but I'd know her a mile away. I don't think she'd recognize me. You know, it's quite a sad affair. Once we were a very happy couple.
I feel very sorry, Harry.
So do I.
All right, Harry. Let's go.
Anything you say.
What about your mother?
Well, Mara said that about Mother. I couldn't help myself. I hit her.
Did you ever stop to consider that what she said about your mother might have been true? Did that ever enter your mind?
My mother's a fine woman. Everything she told me was true. I'd never have had this trouble if I hadn't married Mara.
Yes, and Myra might not be on the critical list now if she hadn't married two people.
What do you mean?
I mean that your mother ran your life after you were married as well as before it.
That's not so. My mother has never interfered in my married life. She hasn't even been in my home half a dozen times since I was married.
Why not?
Because my wife and my mother don't get along. I've tried to make them see good qualities in each other, but my wife insists on insulting and accusing my mother and me of ridiculous things.
Such as?
She keeps harping on the same theme. She says I can't think for myself without getting permission from Mother. She's wrong. Just because a man respects his mother is no sign he's tied to her. She'd probably be happier if I never saw my mother again.
What else?
She resents my visiting Mother as often as I do. She's jealous of my own mother. It's stupid.
How often do you visit your mother?
Well, usually every night. She only lives a few blocks from me. It's because she's alone so much of the time I scarcely see anything wrong in that.
Well, I've met your mother, Julian. And from what I've seen of her, I can understand your wife's concern over her exerting too much influence in your life.
If you make one more crack about my mother, so help me out.
You do, and you'll never know what hit you, Mr. Potter. Now, you may think you'll be able to get away with what you've done, but you're wrong.
May I see my mother now? Mother, you shouldn't have come down here.
Oh, now, Julian, why don't be foolish, dear. When you have your little difficulties, my place is by your side. Now, don't you worry, darling. Everything is going to be all right. Remember I told you about Myra being no good? Well, this is the last trouble she's ever going to cause you.
It wasn't all her fault, Mother.
Oh, I know better, Julian.
Mr. Potter, we just got word from the hospital.
What did they say?
Well, stop standing there like an adolescent. Tell us what they had to say.
Your wife died of internal hemorrhages about 10 minutes ago.
Don't you worry, darling. Everything's going to be all right. Why, it was an accident. Anybody in their right mind knows that. Now, Detective, I want to arrange for bail for my son immediately. I don't want him in this jail 1 minute longer than absolutely necessary.
You'd better leave now, Mrs. Potter.
I beg your pardon?
Get out, Mrs. Potter. As much as I'd like to charge you with murder, I can only charge your son under the laws of this state. Now, get out of here.
You watch your tone with me, young man. I'm not without connections in this city.
All right, Mrs. Potter, let's go.
You'd better go, Mother.
Well, I'll be back, Julian, and don't you worry about a thing. I'm going to see that everything is going to be all right.
All right, Mrs. Potter.
Sit down over there, Potter. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been requested by the various law enforcement agencies with whom this program cooperates to remind you of the most essential help to the law enforcer. You. Please report any lawbreakers to your local police immediately.
You have been in Precinct 11, Police Station. The cases have been real, taken from actual incidents. And now, the results of those cases reenacted on tonight's Police Station.
The case of Harry Picker. Arrested for various violations, he was sentenced to 6 months in the county jail. Mr. Picker is currently serving his sentence. The case of Jean Lester. Arrested for violation of Code 88, Miss Lester appeared in court and was convicted of the charge. Since she had turned state's evidence, and it was through her cooperation that much of the stolen goods of several previous crimes were able to be returned to the owners, the court was lenient, and Miss Lester was sentenced to serve from 3 to 10 years in jail. The case of Julian Potter, arrested for and convicted of the murder of his wife, Myra. Following psychiatric observation, Mr. Potter was declared of sound mind, and trial was held in Superior Court. Following the trial, which received considerable notoriety in the newspapers, Mr. Potter was convicted and sentenced to serve from 20 years to life in prison.